Welcome to the special board meeting for USD 464 for Tuesday, July 28th. Just so everyone aware, we are trying to live stream this. It's on a separate mic, so I guess if you're talking, please try to speak up so they can pick up the sound, and those that aren't here can hear what we're saying. I guess before we approve the agenda and proceed with the meeting, I would like to make one short statement. I recognize that due to the pandemic, there's a lot of concern about the restart of school for the 2021 school year by parents, students, and staff. I know that the board and administration have similar concerns and have been working diligently to address our plan. I also realize that our communications last week caused a lot of confusion, and for that, I apologize. After tonight, I hope all parents, students, and staff have the clarity needed to make the best choice for their family. If you have looked at the agenda under the action items, you will see that the administration is recommending delaying the start of school until Thursday, September the 3rd. That will be a half day for grades 1 through 6 and the 9th graders. The first full day of school per the proposed calendar is Friday, September 4th. The last day of school for the year will be May 27th, 2021. The purpose of the delay is to give the administration and staff the time needed to work together on mandated safety protocols and remote teaching practices. The agenda also includes further discussion on the school restart process. We know this school year will not be normal, and the educational options that have been discussed have different benefits and concerns for each family and staff member. Tonight, after feedback from last week's meeting, the administration has been asked to present plans for two options for the school restart. These include 1, traditional in-school instruction with revised safety protocols, and 2, a remote instruction option for those not wanting to attend in person that can be implemented for all students when and if required. This would remove the hybrid option from consideration as we work to restart school, which is consistent with some other area districts. Each board member is going to be asked to explain their position on the restart options during the school restart segment of the agenda to give the administration further direction on how we move forward. But I'm going to explain my rationale now. I view the hybrid model no safer than traditional in-classroom instruction for staff and students, provided mandated safety protocols are followed. Although daily headcount is reduced in the hybrid model, staff remain exposed to all the traditional in-school students. Also, ongoing extracurricular activities and the inability of the district to control students' interactions outside of the school activities will impact exposure risk. I also question the educational effectiveness of the hybrid model, especially for the lower grades. Lastly, the hybrid model places undue burden on families that lack the flexibility to work from home or afford part-time daycare. Households with multiple children and limited technology resources are also going to struggle to keep pace. I realize that this will place extra burden on our staff, but I'm committed to do everything that I can to have the board and administration provide the resources necessary for a safe working environment for our staff. Staff will also have my support in forcing students and parents to comply with all mandated safety protocols. With that, I would entertain a motion to approve tonight's agenda.
I make the motion to approve the agenda.
Is there a second? It's been moved and seconded. All in favor, please raise your right hand. Motion carried. All right, that draws us into the school opening discussion. But before we have the administration present their updated plans, I would like to ask each school board member, as I stated in my opening address, to, if you would, please provide some short summary on your thoughts following the meeting that was last week and the options that we've been presented. I would entertain any volunteers.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I'll go, but I don't know how short it is.
That's okay.
So everyone get comfortable. I was reminded recently of the old adage, listen, learn, lead, and address the possibility of failure. My niece was visiting me this last week, and when her parents asked her about her stay, she said, Kaya was on the phone the whole time. The truth is, I'm confident that I'm surrounded by a team of people who have spent countless hours recently listening and learning in order to come up with the best possible plan for USD 464 to reopen while keeping the needs of our students, our staff, and our community a priority. We all have a shared purpose, but it's our different circumstances that make it painful to come to a consensus. During my many conversations in recent days, I've learned two things that must guide us. First, we need to respect where every individual and family are on this issue. For many, this feels like a life and death choice. My hope is as we move forward, we do so with a full understanding that we must try to work with those who have individual concerns, both staff and students. Second, I've learned that this is not just a school issue. It is a community obligation. We as a community have the responsibility to step up and respond. Moving forward, there will be individual concerns that arise that may need us to think out of the box to solve. If you are unable to step up and cover, or if you are able to step up and cover for a staff person uncomfortable working in this environment, I would ask you contact the Board of Education office and let them know. Together as a community, we can get through this, but it will take many of us stepping up to do things we might not normally expect to do. Listen, learn, lead, and address the possibility of failure. For this team, there is no decision more important than this. There is risk in going to school, and there is risk in not going back to in-person school. I want to acknowledge that some will be disappointed with our reopening plan, and I'm truly sorry. Please know that we recognize the reality that unfortunately, there is simply no decision in this current environment that will work for everyone. As presented, the USD 464 reopening plan provides the option for families that are comfortable going back to in-person school, and an option of virtual school for families that are not comfortable with an in-person option at this time. Therefore, given all of the information that I have listened to and all of the facts that I have learned, I am in full support of the plan to reopen USD 464 as proposed.
Go ahead, Jay.
I prepared a statement. I didn't want to ad-lib and miss anything, so I'm going to read it, and I apologize for that. These are unprecedented times and require leaders to make impossible decisions that may be unpopular and will certainly not make everyone happy. Despite these impossible decisions, I have great hope. That hope comes from the genuine care and concern that I have seen from students, parents, staff, administration, patrons, and my fellow school board members. Despite what we see daily on the national stage and media, Tonganoxie continues to rise above and come together to support the education process as well as the safety of our students and staff. Initially, there were two options presented, online only and hybrid. I believe that the hybrid option may work on paper, but upon closer examination, I do not think that provides real benefit and in fact may almost present a false sense of safety. I have three primary issues with the hybrid model. They are the concurrent classroom, the impact of people's work schedules, and athletics and activities. I will go into each of those in a little more detail. The concurrent classroom does provide for heightened ability to social distance while in the classroom. Unfortunately, I fear that this structure would certainly lower the overall quality of education. I think it would be impossible for each teacher to adequately focus on online students while managing the students in class. I think any students that chose the online only option would suffer the most. Additionally, I do not think it realistically makes anyone safer, as most students are still in contact with the teacher multiple times per week. Lastly, I do not believe the AB cohorts will provide a benefit when you include activities, athletics, and other community contact. I believe that the impact to families' livelihoods and schedules would be grave and for many unmanageable. While I am the first to say that schools and teachers are not babysitters, the reality is that most families will be impacted tremendously with the hybrid approach. There are many risks involved with any approach, but the impact of families' income and schedule must be taken under consideration. I believe we have much community support and preference to continue athletics and activities in a safe way while aligning to state guidelines. We cannot responsibly say it is too dangerous to go to school and then be okay with athletics and activities. They are opposing thoughts, and to move forward with both would be irresponsible. Given the issues with the hybrid approach, I am in favor of a simpler process and leaving the decision to individual families. The options I am in favor of are an on-site option with enhanced safety protocols and a full online option. We should create operational metrics that define when a shift from on-site to online would be required. The plan would eliminate the concurrent classroom situation. Each teacher would have only on-site or online students. The teacher would keep the same class even as situations require a shift from on-site to online. There is no doubt that teacher and staff safety is top of mind for the administration as well as the school board. If our teachers get sick, the impact is real and immediate. The district is fully committed to aligning to the safety protocols that have been established, as well as rigorous enforcement. There are varying opinions on masks and other safety protocols, but those are not up for debate in this instance. Administration and the school board will stringently enforce all established safety protocols. Lastly, and certainly not least, our students need the social interaction as well as the tremendous social safety net that schools provide. In our district today, there are students that are not eating appropriately, in abusive situations, lacking appropriate adult supervision, and certainly many other equally bad situations. These are just a few of the many factors to consider that cannot be solved for through a Zoom meeting and online learning. These are important and worthy of consideration as well. To conclude, there are certainly many opinions on the right approach and no easy answers. I'm 100% convinced that the staff and administration are all working with the best of intentions to balance health considerations for our students and staff with the educational needs and requirements. I will do everything in my power to make sure that the district communicates a plan to parents and staff as quickly as possible.
Thank you. Anyone else? Stephanie?
I have read countless emails and talked to numerous parents and teachers regarding their perspective on reopening the schools. I believe that virtual is the best option for safety of students, families, teachers, and staff. However, virtual is not the best option for the successful learning of students. A lot of people have talked to me about the hybrid option, and I think the hybrid option is not the best choice. We have to be prepared to eliminate all sports and after-school activities. It makes no sense to have students at home and then send them to practice with the students that we were trying to distance them from. After extensive thought, consideration, and several sleepless nights, I believe that our best option is to delay the start of in-person school at least 14 days after the Labor Day weekend. It would be a virtual start for the first 14 days. After that point, we would start in-person full-time school for families who are comfortable with in-person. The virtual start would give the district more time to evaluate the current situation, and it would get students, teachers, and families prepared for the possible shutdown of schools once again. The in-person learning will take the cooperation of families, teachers, and staff. That means that if your child is sick, they do not attend. If a teacher or staff member is sick, they do not attend. That means that all students, staff, and teachers wear a mask. It also may mean that the school gets creative and builds some type of plexiglass dividers that can be used in classes and during lunch. Alternate areas may need to be set up to spread students out during lunch, with some staff being reassigned to monitor. It may also mean plexiglass areas for speech and microphones for teachers to be heard through their masks. I would also like to consider a 4-day in-person week, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, with Wednesdays as a deep cleaning day, and students are given lessons, activities, either online or paper, that need to be completed that day. On the other hand, parents could be given the choice to participate in remote learning. However, those students should not participate in after-school activities. Designated teachers should be assigned to teach those virtual classes. I know there will likely be a problem getting substitutes, and it will likely require the administration and other staff to fill in gaps. I know it is impossible to make everyone happy, but I hope that we can work together as a community to make sure our students receive the best education possible while keeping our community as safe as possible.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Okay. No, I can't do it without ad-libbing a little bit, and I think in bullet form, so I'm gonna just go through this list, because I was trying to organize my thoughts. And the first thing is, I've been overwhelmed by the understanding of the challenge of the situation. So I just really appreciate the community, the teachers, the parents, in recognizing the challenge that we have ahead. It's going to be very difficult. Now, that said, there's a wide range of opinions. I've talked to teachers and parents that are all over the spectrum, everybody from going full back to full virtual. And so I was trying to figure out and organize in my head how to think through, priorities and how we maybe approach the situation. So one thing that I recognized was, I think everybody in general outside of the pandemic recognizes that in-person is more effective than remote or virtual for most situations. Second is, teachers and staff in this current situation generally feel distancing is more effective than masks, since and I'm seeing a pattern where they feel like they have more control to manage the situation in the classroom. Part of that, as I asked some questions, was due to their understanding or assumption that could those policies be enforced effectively and consistently. So I think that leads into whatever we do, we need to be consistent with our enforcement. We have to enforce things in a quick and consistent way. But I think that's going to be necessary, because otherwise there's not going to be the trust, right, with the policy and procedures that we have. We've struggled a little bit with that already, and I think we've got some of that under control. The other thing is that, thinking about a remote and virtual option, in Leavenworth County, what I think we recognized last spring was that internet and even self-service and options is limited at best in many locations. I had no idea how bad it was in many parts of the county, which limits even the hotspot option, right? Because of that, as I'm thinking about how that would work for a family with multiple kids at home in a hybrid situation, is within a live stream option, you might be able to stream one out of the kids' stuff at a time, and the other children are waiting for the download option at the end of the day. And in an every other day situation, they might not get through that 6.5 hours until midnight, and then trying to get to the school the next day. I don't know yet how big of an issue that is, but I know it's a significant number of people that are going to be facing that. So that's a challenge with the hybrid situation, because it's not really a hybrid live option for a lot of people, it's really a recorded option. So there's the transition from in-person to the virtual needs to lag a day almost as you move that. Another thing is that the risk doesn't appear to be the same across all the buildings. There's a lot of disagreement with regards to how much that is, but as we look at the different age groups, I'm starting to think about it in terms of we need to have the flexibility to look at it not as a district solution, but as an age-based solution, right? Because the risk is different with the younger grades, and I did a lot of reading today on what it's challenging to find unbiased or data out there, right? But I was able to find some that appeared to be that way. We're looking at Israel, Sweden, a lot of the European countries that have gone through similar things that we've gone through. What appears to be a trend is that the younger the student, the less likely they are to transmit between other students or between adults. There was some situations where they were able to measure that students who got sick typically brought that from home and did not have that much spread in the school. We can debate about other information or anything like that, but that's the way, I think in general, I think people are saying that that is a pattern. To what degree, it's probably up for debate. The other thing is that I think parents, and it's talking with a lot of parents, is that preference for online or virtual or in-person varies depending upon the age. They feel much more comfortable that if you were to go online or a hybrid solution, that the older kids can handle that better, and that their ability to support the younger kids at home in a hybrid environment or even a full virtual is pretty limited. And it would be very burdensome to the family. So then based upon our past experiences with just online at those younger ages, I start to question about the effectiveness of a hybrid situation, even if a hybrid or virtual exists, even at those ages. Because for a significant number of people that have their kids there, they might be able to handle it for a little while. However, at some point in time, you're either in person or you're at home waiting to be in person. and it may not be reasonable to say that they can keep learning. And I think as we talk about different options and look at, you know, the virtual or online, I think you just have to start prioritizing the younger grades over the others. So I'm asking for any option that we have, that we recognize that, and we have a plan to ratchet up and ratchet down. I think we can all agree that the numbers, whatever, they're not gonna stay the same. They're either gonna go up or they're gonna go down. And I think Justin mentioned this, I want a clear plan on when that would happen, so there's clarity for people in the community to see and be able to anticipate what might occur, right, based upon our plan. And have that plan prioritized so that we can maintain spacing and keep the younger grades in classrooms. And if that means we're pushing, if the numbers go worse and we need to make that decision, then we have that option to move into the middle school. We have that flexibility to do that, but to me, I think we have to we can't look at it as every grade is equal as far as a solution. So, different perspective on that, but something that I want to keep in mind. My preference is full in person, so, but I recognize that things could change and we need to have a plan to address that.
Thanks, Drew. Karen or Chris, I don't know if you guys have any comments
Sure,
you
I
want to
do.
share?
I'd like to first thank everyone who reached out to share their concerns and suggestions. I saw a lot of things I never thought of, and I do appreciate receiving that information. I think moving forward, I think one of the things that was communicated to me was how important it was to be flexible in our decision in delivering the education, especially to children who have IEPs. Especially if the choice of the family makes is virtual, because it may be challenging to meet that 6.5 hours a day. I don't know if we have any flexibility to that, but I think that's certainly something we need to think about. Also, I am in favor of a delayed start, but I think it's super important to deliver education in as safe of a way as possible, and certainly to be mindful of all the protocols and suggestions or requirements, and certainly follow those. I think we have to be creative in our delivery and understand that, you know, maybe we don't use plexiglass, but maybe we use shower curtains. I saw a online thing where a teacher set up a classroom with clear shower curtains. It was affordable, it was effective. I don't know if it would be easier to clean plexiglass over shower curtains. I don't know what we're using for cleaning, if we're using something that fogs or okay, so perhaps we could get either surface clean. I'm not really sure, but I think for at least my household and many, I think it's super important to get the highest level of education, and that would be delivered in person, in the classroom, if that was supported by the health of the community. I think that's super important. But also, you know, there's families out there who can't provide meals, and you know, our students rely on coming to school and getting support in ways that are meaningful, but can't be met at home. So we do deliver that type of support to a lot of students. And you know, if you talk to any young person out there, they really miss the interaction in school and in person. I'm all in favor for that. I think we just need to be mindful of doing everything we possibly can to deliver everything in a safe manner, straight across the board, educationally, sports-wise. Just be mindful of that.
Thank you, Karen. Chris?
First off, I'd like to point out that each one of us board members do have kids here in the district, so we truly care about the safety of the children and your children. I'm in favor of opening school in person, possibly some combination of virtual. nobody wants to make this decision. Nobody likes the hand we're dealt, but at the end of the day, we've got to make a decision. We've got to start school at some point. I know from my personal experience with my students, the virtual school was a struggle. And not just was it a struggle at my house, they're teenage kids, responsibility's tough, and the parents, you're asking the parents to be accountable for the students that may or may not have the time to make that work. I know the anxiety's high. I know in my household, our lifestyle's really not changed. The only thing that's changed is we've not been able to enjoy a steak at a sit-down restaurant. My kids are still kids. We're still doing the things we've always done. And I see kids out doing the same thing. People are going on vacations. People are out at the park. I see the kids practicing the football, the soccer, weights. And I'm not hearing a huge uptick in the virus in the community. I see skewed results that I don't know that are true. I know it's a concern. I'm mindful of the risk, but I've got the full and utmost confidence in our administration to do the right thing, promote safety, and try to make it a great year, a very unique year. And the reality of it is we're still a little ways from that date even happening. We could get a mandate from the governor, the health department. So it's going to be a moving target. There's no guarantees that what we may or may not approve is even going to happen. So there's going to be flexibility from the staff, parents. It's just got to be that way. And that's kind of where I'm at. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. Well, I hope that was able to get transmitted through on the live stream. I guess with that, I turn it over to Lauren and Tanya to kind of give us an update on, I think after we met last time, we asked for update to the calendar, any changes in plans, and a few other things. So,
where do you want to start? Which would?
I mean, I guess you could, we have the calendar as an action item. I think that was a big topic of conversation that we were discussing last time, kind of how that would look and how that would work out.
I'll turn that over to Tanya because she works with the calendar committee very closely.
Yes.
So let's go ahead.
The calendar committee met yesterday, and I had put together a sample after visiting with the board on Thursday and the administration, and there were several changes. We moved some things around and added some days here, took away some days here. So what we've ended up with is what is in your board packet. It would be starting with the staff members. The new teachers would come in on August 21st and 24th. And then the rest of the teachers would come August 25th through the 1st of September. September 2nd would be a work day so they could prepare and get things ready. The first day of school would be September 3rd. That would be a half day for grades 1 through 5 in this building, 6th grade at the middle school, and 9th grade at the high school. And we've typically done that in previous years. We've added 6th grade into the mix this year, but it's to let, especially as you're moving up to a new building, those students to become acclimated to their building and learn the policies and procedures there without others around. The next day would be September 4th. That would be the first full day of school for grades 1 through 12. And then Labor Day. What I did not add on the calendar, but we will be adding it, so that would be a change to note. September 8th would be the first day of school for kindergarten and pre-K. And for kindergarten, that's going to be a half day. And preschool is already a half day. So just so you note that on your calendar, that September 8th is the first day for kindergarten and pre-K, and it's a half day for those kids. We have changed up the way we do parent-teacher conferences a little bit. We had to do some give and take. So students will go to school on that Wednesday of the week in October on the 14th. The teachers will have their prep and planning from 4 to 8 in the evening, which they need to prepare for conferences. And then the calendar committee thought that it was good to do all conferences on one day, do a big long day of conferences, but we thought at least to start out the year we would try to do those by Zoom. In And we can do, the middle school has their student parent-teacher conferences, so those can continue to be led by students as well. So the end of the first quarter would be October 30th. Thanksgiving break was unchanged. Christmas break was changed just a bit. It would include the last day of school before winter break would be December 18th. And then December 21st would be a work day for teachers, or they would have the option of the flex day work day on January 4th. We would have the Martin Luther King holiday. The parent-teacher conferences for February, due to pushing the start date down in September, we had to move parent-teacher conferences in February to that last week, and they would be reflective of how we did those in October at this point. Spring break was unchanged. And then in April, we have a, what we call, it's a work day, but then we also call it an inclement weather day. So we will have 4 days of snow days built in, but if we happen to run out of snow days, we would attend that day on April 16th. Then into May, the last day of school would be May 27th, and then teacher prep and planning then would be that May 28th. So we would end things before Memorial Day.
And this gets us the mandatory amount of hours and days
It
that are
does.
required by the state.
Yes, it does. That's very important. You have to have at least 1,116 hours of student contact, and we have just over that, which gives us those snow day buffers. That's how we reach that. The other correction before I forget on your calendar, down in that bottom right-hand corner where it says school calendar days breakdown, that should say 164.5. That's pretty small. That's the only change besides adding that first day of kindergarten and pre-K on September 8th. And this calendar, gosh, we had, an hour and a half calendar meeting, and the calendar committee was very instrumental in changing and molding this to what they thought would fit. After we made the corrections, I sent it out to them again, and this is the result of the calendar.
So this gives us the PE days at the front end to.
Front load.
Yes, we moved all the PD days to the front so that we can prepare for remote learning should we go to that, if we give parents that option to do remote. And then if we're forced to go to remote, we will be prepared. That will also give us time to make sure those safety protocols are in place and make sure that we have our procedures down on how things will work. We've ordered temperature scanners, so learning how to use those, the extra cleaning that we have and our different protocols, how to do lunch, recess, how all that works. So that gives us enough time to do that.
Hey, go
I
ahead.
have a question. So can you tell me the thought process behind starting on the 3rd and the 4th? And the only reason, throughout this whole process, I did a comparison of all the league schools and some other schools that are nearby to see what their decisions were on the calendar, given the times we're in. And no, there's not one other school that does something similar to this. So, that I could tell, unless my research was wrong, but I printed out all their stuff and then made a graph. So it just seems, I don't know, I just wanted to know.
Is it just starting before Labor Day? Is that what you mean?
Well,
or-
everyone's starting September, I could read the list, September
Your
9th,
your
September
question
9th.
is the difference in
Yeah.
the day, why the 4th versus everybody else doing the 8th or the 9th after?
So are they finishing in June?
No. So, sorry.
Sorry, I've been.
Let me start over. Okay, so my question is there a reason, is there a strong reason that we want to do the September 3rd and 4th and then, bring those students in, and then instead of just starting everybody on the 8th or 9th?
Well, several reasons. One, it gives us a soft start, especially if, we've been out of school how many months now? Kids haven't had to get up early and get to school on time. It gives us the ability to have 2 days of that, or 1.5, and then a break, because we'll all need to recoup after that. Typically, we would have started school on a Thursday, Friday, or we have in the past. We've just done that just so we have some recoup time. So part of the plan was to start those 2 days, recoup Labor Day, and then come back and start strong on the 8th. Another reason was if we would have moved those start dates down, we would have either had to take some days out of the middle or push it clear into June. And we thought, you know, we didn't want to have school, you know, start school, then end, have Memorial Day, and then come back again, which I think we'd lose a lot of kids over Memorial Day. They just wouldn't come back. Another was just trying to meet the requirements of the negotiated agreement, which is the teacher contract that we're bound to and the number of days and hours and things.
And another thing they talked briefly about was trying to balance the number of days and hours in first semester and second semester, and we're even changing the end of first semester into January, pretty deep into January. So, but there was a strong push, from what I gathered from listening, to finish before Memorial Day.
Is there any concern that a lot of kids will be missing those first couple of days?
That we, I don't know.
If they've already got things planned, they might. If it were me, I wouldn't want to miss the first day of school, and I've been out since, you know, March or early March. Either way, you're going to miss
basically a
kids.
9-month summer, so I mean, they haven't got the traveling by then.
But I think Tanya has covered all the, I mean, that's the rationale.
Well, this may not have been part of the process, but in my mindset, it helps. If people want their kids in school, it helps maybe you can put a barrier for them to travel outside of the area over Labor Day weekend to help, I mean, for the safety of everyone that's here, it would be.
Yeah, I didn't know if that was a reasoning, and I think it was, as far as a strategy to mitigate risk, I think that's
It was mentioned.
yeah, it's okay to say it.
It was mentioned.
I mean, but-
Not as strong. It wasn't by far it wasn't the leading reason for.
Right.
It was more trying to finish.
I
before
get
Memorial.
the Memorial Day on the back end, you know, without having to change the length of the day.
Right.
Because you might, is it true that if we had snow days, we would have the length of the day as an option to help make them not do that, or are we constrained on that?
We're constrained by the negotiated agreement on,
Okay.
because they list the hours of the day, 8-hour day, and then you have to squeeze it into the specific number of days. So that will always limit our snow days.
Okay.
And quite frankly, you see a lot of changes in different calendars in the area because the number of minutes can affect how many days they
Right.
built up. We tend to have less. I mean, if you call them snow days or extra hours, we don't have as many as some of the other schools.
I did notice too that some districts don't have a full week for spring break either.
Yeah, I mean, there's all those variables, yeah, there's a lot of it.
Does this align well enough to Baser to keep us in good shape with our co-op?
Yes, we have never started and ended at the same time ever. They've always had a longer calendar length because their days are a little bit shorter than ours. We've always tried to align our bigger breaks, like our spring break, Christmas break, and those Christmas and Thanksgiving don't usually get in the way because those are holidays, but spring break has always been a point of contention because we have itinerant staff who serve both districts. So if one district is on spring break and the other's not, what does that teacher do with their time? And then which spring break do they take? And then do they have to get a sub if they take one over the other? And so that's been spring break has always been very important to align with Baser.
And this one does.
Yes, it does.
Now, you mentioned something about scanners. What's the intent for those? Is it every building has scanners?
We
Temperature
purchased 20 facial scanners.
Okay.
And I think there's 6 at the high school, 6 at the middle school, and 12, is that right? Or 8, right?
It'll be at all the entrances.
Yeah, all the entrances. Takes about 5 seconds to do a temperature scan. It's facial recognition.
Is there a reporting burden for any individual on that, or, I mean, is there somebody who has to input information, or is it all
It's,
automatic?
Chuck might know a little bit more. Did you catch all that? You set that thing.
Well, we got we used the same company that Baser's using.
Cytec.
And so I reached out to them because they did demonstration in Baser. They came over to the demonstration here at the board office. And there are a lot of technology that we could use for tracking. The main thing is, and they've used it in some schools in preschool, summer school, because So we asked about that because of the way they sit, and we walked away feeling like we could get kids tested, temperature checked in a real, quick manner, in an accurate manner.
And recorded.
And recorded, and the other potential technology in terms of tracking and keeping, those things are all available, but that's something that we're gonna have to look into. But for the basics, that what we need, so kids and parents know, and staff, when they walk in the building, they're gonna have a temperature check. It's a pretty slick deal, for lack of a better term. And, I think all three buildings were on the same page, that this would be the easiest and most efficient way to accurately test our children and staff when they come in the building.
I think that's great, because I think there's a lot of households that do not have a thermometer.
Well, I mean, I think
And
that's
I-
kind of,
You gonna mention about the grade school grant?
Yes, last year, before this all came down, Ashley Barton, our school nurse, applied for a grant for just that issue. And we're hopeful we'll hear back, which means we'll be able to send a thermometer home through a grant for all of our elementary families. And I mean, we've had this discussion. I think it's very important that our parents join with us on that one task. So they may check them at home, they're gonna get it again at school, and that's gonna be a shared responsibility. But I think at least at the elementary, if we get the grant and we're able to do that, I mean, parents are gonna have to sign a waiver and some things, but there's a real good opportunity that we may be getting thermometers for all of our elementary families.
When's the decision on that?
Of whether we're gonna get them?
Yeah.
She didn't know for sure, she was still waiting, and she was.
She was
at the-
approved, we just don't have them.
Yeah, and she was there on Friday or Monday, and we wanted some of a nurse there to see if this was something that was working, and she was totally supportive of it as well.
I mean, the calendar is an action item later, but is there any other questions related to the calendar in terms of the plan?
So real quick, just so we get the motion right, so the tweaks were adding the kindergarten start date
In preschool.
and preschool start date on the 8th, and updating the total school in session from 165.5 to 164.5.
Yes, that's exactly right.
Thank you, Justin.
Which on the previous calendar, the number was 164.9.
It was, and I have no idea how it was changed. This is done in a different program called InDesign that I'm not familiar with.
All right, I mean, I guess, I think maybe one of the other, I mean, we kind of walked through all the different plans last time, but the topic, I guess, of a parent survey, well, we had the survey, I think the public knows we retracted that survey, but I guess whether there's still a need or a survey gonna go forward, or I guess what kind of the administration plans to do if we proceed with kind of these two options as we're enrolling kids.
Just need a little guidance, I mean,
I mean, I guess.
I'm not exactly sure what the board would like me to do. I mean, we talked about putting out a staff survey, that was pretty simple. You know, that was in line with, remote or, face-to-face,
I mean,
basically.
usually the most effective way to plan for a survey is if we think about, okay, what are we wanting to do with the survey or the information, what decisions do we want to make out of it? And then tailor the question specific for that. Whether that be planning out a presentation that you're going to make with the survey so that you know exactly what information you need. So the question isn't necessarily whether whether or not you're going to send out surveys. Is there questions that we need answered or data that we need to make decisions or to be able to plan more effectively that we need to have the survey to help support? And if so, then we need to understand what exactly that information is so that the survey's tailored for
Well,
that.
obviously with the staff survey, we need to know their comfort level in returning face-to-face.
Yeah, it's a risk, right? It's
Yes.
understanding and ranking of risk, right?
Mhm.
So I've only talked to a handful of them, and if it's a spacing thing, if it's an enforcement thing, if it's in general, if it's risk at home, if it's risk with family members that aren't at home, with transmission with the kids there's any number of those, and to be able to understand, it's not just, are you concerned? It's where are you concerned and how concerned are you for each of those?
Well, and what are you gonna do with that information?
Well,
Like,
what we, with,
what's gonna be
with
achieved
the,
from
with the
that?
staff information?
Uh-huh.
Well, what we need to know is numbers. We need to know how many teachers are willing to come back in face-to-face situation. That helps us. If they're not comfortable, what we talked about was setting up an appointment with administration to go over the process. What, is there a medical rationale behind it?
Well, I think-
What's there
I
that we
think you have
need
to
to know?
set the baseline first before you ask that question of here is what we are considering. If this is our plan, you know, if this is what is adopted, in that context of that plan, how comfortable are you? And if not, you know, in what areas are you uncomfortable in and to what degree?
So I guess my quick question is, are we moving forward with two plans?
Well, I mean, I guess we don't have an action item on this. We've asked you guys for a plan. We had a plan presented last week, and I guess we had some concerns for it, and the board members had expressed that, and it still needs to be built out. So, but we also have time as kind of an essence. I mean, I think we need some information from the staff, because if the elementary is going to have a dedicated, if there's somebody that has to be dedicated to remote teaching, I mean, I assume you need to know who's coming back. I mean, there's a lot of decisions to be made, I guess. I mean, the staff survey, I guess I would leave a little more to you guys, but I mean, I guess my question really raising this was, what do you need from parents as we enroll kids? Do we need to know whether I mean, is there a process in the enrollment where it's going to say you're virtual or not?
I think making sure there's clarity as well. So if we're gonna ask a survey, is it really a survey to gain people's opinion about where they might go, or is it a final answer? And if it's the former, that may be fine, but then when do we capture the final answer? So there may almost be two things, right? There's where do you think you might go, and then later on, what are you actually going to do? But I think we need to be really clear about which question we're asking there, personally.
The first one is more of an allocation of resources and prioritization. But with regards to the staff or even the parent, I can't imagine a scenario, no matter what you ended up doing, where you wouldn't like to have that information to understand where the concerns are, because at some point in time, there will be a return, right? And how do you manage that, and what measures need to be taken in place? But you have to set it up. It's not just an open-ended question with regards to, hey, how comfortable are you returning? How comfortable are you returning with this, under these assumptions, under this plan? Temperature taken, enforcement of the, policy on mask, and that it's enforced, or the burden is taken off the teachers for that enforcement, or, those kinds of things. And in the context of that, understand how comfortable they are against that, because if it's an open-ended question, people are going to fill in the
So
blanks
it's
with their own thoughts.
my fear, Drew, is on one hand, I'm hearing let's keep it simple and direct, and then on the other hand, how much information do we need to provide to make that decision? And then it complicates it.
Yeah.
So
But if you don't have enough, then the value, there's a sliding scale, so that the more information you provide with regards to the context, the more valuable the information you have. If it's no information, if it's yes, no question, then I don't know that you get a lot of value out of that, or what assumptions they're making in their head when they answer that question, because if they're, I'm just worried that doesn't get you what you're looking for.
So I'm not real thrilled about sending out a survey till we know what the direction and really what we're.
So here's my suggestion. My suggestion, I think the board spoke tonight. The board is in favor of an online option and an on-site option. I think that the administration can take that direction, do the next turn of this document, and I know one of them came out today. And then I assume there needs to be some board action at some point.
Yes.
But we need something to approve, not, 7 different people's
Right,
speeches.
right.
So I think if we have another special board meeting, whenever,
The earliest convenience.
at the earliest possible convenience, with another revised version of this, then we can approve that, and then we can send that out with a survey, or send it out with a revised enrollment that just lets people sign up either way. To me, those are the steps in my mind. I don't know if they're right or not, but those are the steps in my mind.
Well, that makes sense to me.
So in reviewing other districts' plans and how they went about it, it appears that most districts did the parent survey, they took that data and they made their plan. And then after they constructed their plan, they went straight to enrollment. So like, I just was trying to read through quick, but like for example, one school has enrollment on Tuesday, August 18th. So they already know their plan, they enroll. And I think even in regards to the staff survey, unless you have a concrete plan, so the staff member knows exactly what they're answering questions for, like it would be hard as a staff member to answer questions about how concerned I was if I didn't know exactly what my day looked like. So I think that, you know, you have to have that component of it for anything, for any survey or enrollment.
I do think though that we can leave the board meeting tonight, while the formal plan isn't 100% baked or approved, I think we can leave the board meeting tonight with most of the patrons understanding what the intention is more clearly than we've given it in the past. The two options.
Yes.
How much does the, interest in full online impact, planning, with regards to that? Because, and it may be a time constraint now that isn't doable or possible with the timeline that we have, but where I'm coming from is if there's a significant portion of parents, especially maybe older kids that would prefer an online only option, then that definitely changes it could help the strategy with regards to, in person. But I don't know if the timeline supports that input, or if it's done in parallel.
I guess, just sitting here, I feel like we need to have a solid plan before we go float too many surveys, even though it
Right.
could change.
I don't think we're at the point yet of sending another survey without this document being finalized. I think that the direction tonight would be very helpful to the community, but I would be hesitant to send another survey until something's in writing.
I would agree with that.
I guess part of my question is, when I'm, maybe I'm simple-minded on this, but, if you have 100 third graders and you have 5 teachers, that's 20 per class. And, 45 of them sign up for virtual. Ask 2 teachers to teach those 45 kids virtual. Put the little bit larger class size on the virtual. Divvy the rest of them up among the other 3 teachers. I almost question whether a survey is really needed, or we just take the enrollment data and do the division problem and assign students to classes and move forward. There may be more to it that I don't fully understand, but in my simple mind, it could almost be that simple, and a survey is not even really necessary.
Yeah. I just bring it up because it came up last meeting. I don't really feel like it's our, I guess, decision about a survey. I guess it's a matter of what you guys need to facilitate and build out your plan. But until we probably have the final plan, maybe it's hard to say what's needed.
Well, there's a couple terms that I think we might be confusing. Enrollment is basically just updating and verifying your information in our system. So whether you're coming back in no matter what capacity, complete enrollment. The enrollment is built within Skyward. It does not have a question about remote or on-site, so that's totally separate. Now, the difference between survey and maybe intent, or whatever we want to call it, I guess if you're saying survey, does that mean you want thoughts, opinions, whatever, I think from the families at this point, given the information, so, giving them the KSDE navigating change document, giving them the document that will be approved next board meeting, whatever, the reopening plan and all the safety protocols, we would need them to make a selection, whether they plan to go remote or on-site. That would then guide our direction on how many teachers we allocate and move.
But isn't it as simple at that point as just saying, you take the numbers and you divvy up the students and teachers accordingly? I mean, it probably isn't, it's probably a pretty simple math problem. It's not gonna markedly change the strategy.
Wouldn't change the strategy, it may change what different teachers are going to do,
Fair enough.
I may be in a classroom with a lot of kids, but now I'm just doing remote,
Fair enough.
I think the sooner the better.
Well, it seems like we need to have the plan, and we could have a simple questionnaire, and if that's what you guys need, I think you need to make it as part of the proposal that comes back for the final plan. I mean, this is what we're gonna do to make sure the families confirm and we divide the kids out appropriately.
But again, I think if there is a questionnaire, the only thing I care about on the questionnaire is if there's data derived from the questionnaire that impacts the work that you guys do to reopen schools. If it's as simple as a math problem, then there's no need for a questionnaire.
Well, could be the only question you put on there is which.
Could well be.
Are you doing remote or on-site?
And I'm talking about the parent questionnaire at this
Right.
point. That's not necessarily
Yes.
a staff
Yeah,
question.
the
Yes.
staff, we need the input.
Can we talk for a second about I mentioned a virtual
Yes.
start to the school. And let me tell you a few reasons why I suggest that. Chances are very likely we're gonna have to, at some point, have some period of time where kids are gonna have to be virtual. Either they're quarantined at home, or for 14 days, or they're sick, or we have to close down schools because the governor has ordered us to close down schools. It's not a process, it's a process. It's not like all of a sudden, oh, now you're virtual, sorry. There's a process to that. And so giving those teachers the ability to begin that process, I think, could be very valuable to start off the school year. It also gives us a little more time to kind of build that up as we are preparing for the school year. And so I think it would be beneficial for the teachers. It'll be a little bit more of a hardship on the families, but it will definitely be beneficial to the teachers to do some type of virtual beginning to the school. I'm not suggesting a long period of time, but at least a virtual beginning to where those that the students and the teachers are established virtually, and then if they need that, they can just flow right into that virtual rather than having several days to try to build that process for the students.
So my suggestion would be, in part of your plan, is to define, obviously we'd hope we'd get the direction specifically from Leavenworth County. We don't have that yet. We may have it next week. I think we build out what are the metrics that would cause us as a district to pivot between on-site and online. And, base it on whatever the best data we have, CDC data, state data, come up with our version of it and acknowledge that if Leavenworth County tells us something different, it might change. Put that in this document. And that would be one of the things that would inform how we would actually start school. Because, I think Chris made the point, this, if we define what would ask us to move to an online option, a lot could happen between now and early September, and we may, based on this document, have to start an online option. So I think that has to be one of the things that's in here.
Yeah, I respect Stephanie's, thoughts, because being from the teacher standpoint, I see that as a realistic possibility, but I'm with Justin in terms of what's going to trigger this. I think before we commit that we're going to be online for the first 2 weeks, we need to have some kind of metrics or basis. What's the county requirement? What are we gonna do? And if the data supports it or it's close enough, maybe we have to go that route. But I think the kind of view tonight is we're defining we're gonna have two options and get the plan, the pieces into the plan. And I really appreciate you bringing it up though.
I have a clarification question. So how is it different? So our kids were just virtual because they were home, So so I understand what you're trying to accomplish by it, but how is it different? Like how are they not prepared to go back virtual because they already just did that?
Well, each teacher has to set up their own classroom, a virtual classroom. So if they're using Google Classroom, you have to set up for those students. They've been in another virtual classroom with another teacher. So they have to set up that classroom. They have to have lessons in there prepared. Last year, it was towards the end of the year. Probably a lot of teachers don't have those lessons already established in Google Classroom for the beginning of the year. So the teachers are gonna be all of a sudden panicked trying to get some of those things into those classrooms, where if we have a beginning to it and the students are already established and they understand how it works and they're working with that teacher, then it's gonna be a much easier flow when that has to happen. Otherwise, we're gonna have a period of time where we're gonna have students not working and teachers frantically trying to get all the information in, where if we already begin that way and we're knowing we're gonna begin that way, it's gonna be a much easier transition.
Well, I think part of the plan we're trying to recommend is that there's a remote option for those who choose it, but that remote option
But I'm not
has to
talking
be.
about a remote option. I'm talking about, there will be a time, I am sure that there'll probably be a time where a kid has to be quarantined and they have to be from home. And that will give them an easy, you just basically you'll be able to just turn the switch and allow them to be able to do a lot of the work from home during those 14 days that they are quarantined at home. Where if we don't have that, how are we gonna deal with those kids that have to be at home for 14 days? What's the plan for those kids? They're at home now for 14 days. What are the teachers then trying to figure out how to get them the work they need? I don't know, it seems like if you're thinking about it from the beginning, because the potential is very likely, it'd be a much easier transition.
Well, I don't understand the difference between the kid that gets sick and gets quarantined for a week and the other families that choose to be a remote option. I mean, it seems
Well,
like,
it
to
probably
me, it's like
would be
it's the same
pacing.
thing.
It'd be pacing. You might be at a slightly different place in pacing. You're probably not doing the exact, if another teacher is teaching it virtually and another teacher's in the classroom, and that kid's coming from the classroom, their pacing may be just slightly off, and so you're either overlapping or they're gonna miss information.
I mean, if you're home quarantined and sick, chances are your
But not everybody's
schoolwork's
sick.
not
Well,
the last
if
time.
it's a household approach, like a lot of folks I know would imagine will be recommended to do, then it's parents, guardians, and that entire household is home. And I know my work, if anybody in my house gets sick, we're all home. Like they don't want me. So I think that's the point, is like there could be a lot of healthy people in the room or asymptomatic people which can do work just fine. Is that correct?
Correct.
Well, that's gonna vary by grade level as well, isn't it? I mean, I
Yes.
don't know, in our plan, I mean, it's different from the elementary to, I mean, it's gonna be harder to have dedicated teachers in the middle and high school because I mean, they each teach a specific subject, there's not as many of them.
Well, they're not gonna stay virtual forever. Those kids that are quarantined for 14 days will be returning to the classroom likely.
Well, I just mean our instruction process. I mean, you're gonna have dedicated teachers in the elementary level for anybody remote. More likely than have an overlap, I guess, at the
So,
higher grades, but I guess.
In the beginning, I've kind of come to the conclusion that anything extended remote, online only, or even hybrid with the little ones, like, does anybody disagree that that is going to be, the effectiveness is going to be very low over the entire population? Is that accurate? Does it be?
I agree.
So.
It seems very challenging.
Yeah, because you start to get to the point to where the ability of someone in that household to set the 6.5 hours, you keep that, like, I just don't, among a lot of households with single parents that work 2 jobs, you know, the alternative is, especially if you're in a hybrid situation, the last thing you want is then that kid going over to granddad and grandma's to do the hybrid day, and that's probably not advisable. Because I think as we talk about this, virtual or hybrid, I think we need to separate out those younger ones, just because I think families to some extent could probably do it for some period of time, but the effectiveness of that drops off pretty dramatically at some point.
But at some point, we may not have a choice.
Yes.
And that's why
And
I'm
then at
saying.
that point in time, we've gotta be honest, I think, with regards to how you recover from that once it's over.
And that's why I'm just saying, I think we need to give those teachers and the families the opportunity to be prepared for that when it's very likely to happen at some point in time. It's not a impossible idea that it actually could very well happen to a lot of families.
So,
Probability in our planning, that with a plan, I mean,
so is it accurate to say then that that is a strategy to help in that transition? And if, as part of the planning, that becomes a recommendation saying that's the best way to handle it, or something else, and that would address your concerns, that?
If not, like, for example, in my classroom, I'm gonna start right off by putting those kids in Google Classroom and getting started with things in Google Classroom while they're sitting in my classroom, because the probability is there. It's gonna be very likely, and so I don't wanna waste that time when we turn that switch to say we're all now at home. I don't want that to be wasted time.
Right.
So either way, it's very likely all teachers are gonna do it. Either they're gonna do it, kids sitting in a classroom, or they're gonna do it virtually. I think it would be I think families would understand it better if it was done virtually rather than those kids sitting in the classroom. The kids would understand it much better.
Yeah.
Although our remote learning is gonna look very different this fall than it did in the spring. And those kids have transitioned to a new grade level, new teacher, and we'll be using different platforms. So I think it's important to bring them in and teach them how to use those platforms before you then send them home to a remote environment instead of just, hey, we're starting remote, figure it out at home. That's just a different
So my
perspective.
question is, and I gotta believe everybody's students are better than mine, I'm sure of that. But how are we gonna get these kids measured that are behind and have deficiencies? Because I gotta believe, I'm not the only one with slow learners, that we've got to get caught back up.
Part of the remote learning will be that students at home, whether they're remote full-time or remote part-time, will be doing the same assessments that we are doing with the kids at school.
To get everybody on the same page and caught up.
How do you monitor that if they're at home doing an assessment?
As best as you can. You know, I mean, they
I mean,
did it with
data's not
nursing
gonna
school
be-
too. Yeah, I mean, they did it with nursing school students, and they, you know, had to have certain parameters set at home, and you do the best you can. We have things like Go Guardian where we can lock their system to just be on the one page. They can't deviate and go Google an answer. You know, at some point, we have to trust but verify. At some points though, if they're totally remote at home, for some assessments, we'll have to bring them in and provide a safe environment within. And maybe that's on a Saturday, maybe that's in the evening, I don't know. But like for state assessments, if we have state assessments this year, they'll have to take state assessments, whether they're remote or on site, and we have to bring them in for that.
Yeah,
There's no way to do state assessment online?
Not from home.
Not from home?
No.
I get nervous when that's just, well, it's the best that you can, because to me, it's just like evaluation. Here's our options, and we've evaluated, and this is the most suitable option to do. I just get nervous with the term best that we can, because to me, then it's like, how effective do we actually know that it is, right? And if the best option isn't that effective, then I just want to know that, right? I mean, and there's nothing we can do about it. So.
I gotta think there'll be some guidance from the state. If there are gonna be state assessments, almost every district has some flavor of remote.
You have to bring them in for state assessments. That's already been said. I mean,
I think to Stephanie's point, which I think was a really good one, I think there probably ought to be a prerequisite list of things that every teacher and every student would do to be ready to pivot from on-site to online. Whether that option means that we do some flavor of the first few weeks or not, I don't know. I struggle with, particularly at the lower grade levels, having the students not build a pretty quick relationship with that teacher face to face and think that you're gonna get much out of those first 2 or 3 weeks is my challenge. But I agree with 100%. There's a prerequisite list of things that we have to have ready so that when we pivot from on-site to online, that we don't lose 2 or 3 days working through that. I sent you guys a message earlier, even really tactical stuff like school supplies and devices, and you know, there has to be a plan for every one of those things. So I think that needs to be in here too.
Well, so, I spent some time today looking at the different plans of schools. I was worried that we were more behind than I think we actually are in some cases. Because the plans and stuff that have been out there, although there's been some districts have had some more communication, with regards to what their intent is. It's been like a one-page letter, or it's been something, that's pretty ambiguous and wide open for flexibility. And I get exactly why they would communicate it that way, because school's still a month out, right? Who knows what's gonna happen? But given where we're at, that there are some out there, are we taking that and looking at engaging against some of those as far as being able to accelerate our planning process based upon work that others have done or in similar situations, similar districts?
Yes, we have those. We
Okay.
have them.
Excellent, good.
A lot of communication going on between area schools, county schools, league, state.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
so we're not reinventing.
I knew that, that doesn't surprise me. I just wanted to make sure that.
Yes, yeah.
There's been a lot of collaboration. I mean, I sat in and Justin joined me with the lead principals at all three buildings, and Lauren and Tanya yesterday, and I know they spent some time this weekend, so I'm confident they're trying. This is difficult, but we do need to kind of keep moving our plan along.
Yes.
I guess we kind of talked about whether the need for survey, we've talked about metrics. I appreciate Stephanie's point about how should we start the school. I guess, I think we've kind of checked off the things I don't know if there's any other updates, what we've done since last week when we met that you want to share, or if there's other questions from board members on things.
Should we hit on that timeline?
Yeah,
Timeline that I sent out.
yeah, I think that would be good.
So, and once again, this is a little, I updated mine again since I sent it out to you. To me, it's narrowed down to the two discussions tonight. I'm starting on July 28th. So what I feel now is that we need to hold off. I had down there, setting up those surveys tomorrow. And what I'm hearing is we need to approve the plan first and then revisit any surveys. So that changes all of this. Is that correct, Justin?
Yeah, I think so.
That's that. So I think that Wednesday, July 29th situation has changed from what I understand.
I think there ought to be on the timeline is when we share the timeline.
Yes. So-
'Cause I think that addresses a lot of the anxiety that is out there
Right.
with regards to, hey, I don't have it yet, but I know when the plan is to get it.
I-
True, but most of the things on the timeline are answered by the school calendar, which we're gonna approve.
Right.
Yes.
Yes. Now, I can tell, Mark, Farrar, you might help me just a second, but did Keisha decide to keep everything?
Yeah.
That's huge too. They're not altering August 17th.
Yeah, everything will be the same, start date for practices and first competitions are as scheduled. So-
And that was by executive, the executive board at 4
Do I need
o'clock.
anything to add on that?
So, yeah, that board meeting just took place today at 4, and they voted to not adjust the calendars at all for occasions. So they are planning, of course, local county health departments or other agencies could alter it for county schools, but as far as Keisha's calendar for competitions and dates, they have voted to not change it and keep it as is.
So and I think Justin is correct, the rest of this is just addressed by the calendar approval tonight. But the adjustments will happen, what goes on tomorrow through the next special board meeting. That's what it looks like to me. Yes.
I agree with what you're saying. However, I think that the communication say, hey, we had the meeting, this is what, these are the highlights of that calendar versus just skipping that. That might be helpful in a
I think after this meeting, we can communicate, here's the calendar, we will have approved that, or, let's see how everybody votes. Theoretically, we'll have approved that in the next 30 minutes. And some bullet points from this meeting that articulate, here's the two options. And I think that'll give people more information than they've had to date. And then take the conversation that we've had today and anything else that you guys want to add, you know, kind of get, this will be a living document, right? It's not going to be final, but it's going to be something that we can approve. Get back together as soon as humanly possible. I don't know when that would be, but as soon as humanly possible, have a board action to approve this, because I do think that there ought to
we
be
need
some
to have
board
an
action.
approved plan.
And then part of this would define if we need a survey or not.
I agree. That makes sense.
I have a question. Are there any sporting events that will happen before the start of school then, other than
Yes.
practices?
I'll turn that over to, yes, I'm sure there is.
Yes. So with our current schedule, we would have athletic events that would take place.
Volleyball would be-
Monday, but that last week of August,
Yeah.
we would have athletic events. that would take
Cross-country,
place.
volleyball would come to mind.
Yes, I believe we have a JV girls golf tournament, would actually be our first athletic event, but then several others before the start of school. And then the opening start for practices would be August 17th.
So this
So
document.
several weeks before school would start.
So this document really defines all of our PPE and distancing guidelines, so that
That is-
has to be done and approved before any of those activities, I would think.
That is in addition to that KSDE
Right, right,
change
right,
document.
right.
And that KSDE document has the full,
I know.
I'll put
that
it-
one is more condensed, but it's pulled out of that KSDE document, and that's a state document.
Might read.
But
they don't read it without-
Keisha also has their own
There is, I mean, we've already put a lot of that information in there,
Yes,
so
exactly.
so I don't think that's, you know, it's not like that's a big gap.
Right, and you're right, Jim, Keisha does
Keisha
have
has
their
their
own.
own guidelines, don't they,
guidelines.
for competitions and distancing and protection of.
And we're currently following all of those guidelines that have been established.
Code.
I think we just
apologize.
No, you're all right. We were just talking about the different restrictions and with the athletics starting before school starts. But Keisha has their own standards, I assume, and rules around COVID and athletic protection and fans and different things.
Yeah, so they have put out a lot of recommendations over the last couple of weeks that they have worked with the National Federation to implement. A lot of them are recommendations, but they're recommending, well, the list goes from as long as transportation to the hosting of athletic events to, if you do need to host a tournament, what it would look like to have multiple schools and communities coming together. So there's a long list that I can share with the board if you guys wanted to, with the document that is. But yes, there's a long list that they put together for us to work through. Some of that, I have waited until the board meeting this evening to determine what it's even gonna look like, what the calendar dates are gonna be. And like I said earlier, as of right now, Keisha has said they are not adjusting their calendar, so.
Yeah, it might be good to, I'm sure it's lengthy, but it probably wouldn't hurt to share that document or whatever the Keisha.
It can be found on the Keisha website also.
Okay.
How's that being communicated to the coaches, and how's that being reinforced with the coaches? The guidelines, how are they being communicated to the coaches, and how are they being enforced with the coaches?
So currently, right now, the majority of the guidelines are just being implemented for summer activities. So that includes kind of typical things that we've all become accustomed to, reporting if you've had any direct contact, out-of-state travel, if you have a fever, if you have any symptoms. All of that's being reported prior to any practice, strength and conditioning session, activity this summer. Coaches have that, and a lot of them have created Google Forms that they can quickly do that digitally with their athletes as they show up. And then social distancing throughout the practices and activities, masks being worn when they can't social distance. Those are the primary ways that it's been implemented this summer. And then, of course, also cleaning, sanitation of equipment between and even during those activities. So those are, and again, that's kind of stereotypical. I mean, that's what we're all becoming accustomed to. That's how it's being implemented this
And
summer.
there's checks and balances for that too, like if you're communicating that, but how's that being checked to make sure all those things are being put into place?
So all of those logs are being run through Mr. Farrar and myself, and so we have access to all of those and have been checking those weekly. Coaches, the way those Google Forms are set up, all responses are sent to a spreadsheet, and we have access to those spreadsheets. The dates are all timestamped when it goes through, and like I said, that's all the responses for every single athlete that's participating in those activities. We can see the response for every single one of those questions. every day that it's done.
I have a question about enrollment. So, from reviewing other plans, unless I misunderstood a lot of them, I think that a lot of different districts they are picking their plan, whether the districts, whatever options the district is providing at enrollment, they are picking them. So, or they are choosing that for their students. So I understand that our process doesn't do that. Like, I understand what you're saying. We just go into our student and pay our fees and whatever, and that's not an option. But I feel like the information collected from knowing what students are choosing is important. So I don't know if the answer can be made tonight or not, but I just think that that's something that probably needs to be decided sooner than later. And if that's an option to do that, I mean, I know it's not now, but could it be an option so that?
It could, sure, but we typically open enrollment, online enrollment, it's typically the first part of July. We had to push it back just a little bit because of free and reduced applications. So at that point, we still didn't know what we were doing. So, and maybe tonight we have a clearer picture and then we can go forward and ask that. In the future, if we have to do this, we can add it to the enrollment piece, but it just was not.
I think that the question that we have to get to is really important, and communicating how we're gonna get to it is really important, but given that the horse has left the barn on enrollment, it doesn't feel like it should be part of enrollment. But that question and getting to that answer pretty quick is important.
I mean, have a large percentage of people enrolled?
A large percentage have completed their enrollment online.
Jim, one of
Yes,
the
go
things
ahead.
that I think we might also consider, I think we need to be in a position where we feel like there's a high likelihood that whenever the next special meeting is, that we will approve this and not ask 100 more questions.
Right.
So I might suggest that we form a committee that could work with the administration, make sure that we as a board are, at least the committee can represent to the board that we're comfortable with this. That way when we meet again, I'm fearful that we can't have 2 more rewrites. The next time we come back together, I think we need to be in a position to do this, and I think if we had a committee that focused on it, we would still be aligned to all of our open meeting rules, because there wouldn't be a quorum, but some of the board members would have visibility to what's gonna be in here so that we can approve it the next time, not talk about it.
Does that sound like a reasonable help for you guys?
I think it might help clarify exactly where we're headed.
I mean, do I
And
have any
since I suggested, I'll volunteer.
How is you were gonna get away from that one? Is there any other volunteers that would like to participate?
I was gonna volunteer to use them.
Stephanie would be here. I think that'll help.
I would like when there to be like one committee that I'm not participating on, even though this is very important. Is there a third person that would want to participate in this?
Sure will.
I mean, I'd like to have a diversity of perspective, and you and I have similar perspectives, but, guided I would be willing to do it, but I want to make sure that we have a diverse enough perspective.
What is what time frame do you see the committee meeting?
Well,
I just want to make sure I'm available for.
I guess, I mean, with
I
the
don't know how
information we've
quickly-
discussed right tonight, I mean, I know Lauren has some time off. I mean, I don't think well, you
Our
could be
next
next
board-
week. I got a few days vacation next week as well, but our next board meeting is August the 10th.
I don't think
I
we
mean,
need
if
that.
there would be something
You wouldn't
late,
have it
late next
before the
week,
10th.
late next week, there a committee to review something and then try to get it in on the agenda for the regular meeting. Is that a feasible?
Because you're gone Thursday and Friday.
Yeah, that gets me out of the committee too.
So Kaya's part. I would say either Tuesday or Wednesday of next week. Tuesday or
Does
Wednesday.
that not work for your schedule?
I would I mean, I think you all know more than, I mean, this is something that I would love to be a part of, but I mean, I wouldn't be able to meet in person for it, so that's my
I don't know that
concern.
in person's that big a deal. I mean, we're talking about redlining documents and
Right.
sending questions and.
I think-
but
Okay,
I'm not
well,
trying
I'd
to
be
talk
happy,
into-
no, I'd be more than happy to be on the committee then. I just didn't want to volunteer to be on a committee.
We'll try
then
to set it up
would
for
be a
either
problem.
Tuesday or Wednesday.
I would say give yourself, if we're putting it
Is that
on
all
the
right?
agenda for Thursday, I think to make sure we have time to get it in and processed by everybody. But no, I would support that. Let, so you work with Lauren and Tanya, and that would be a great help. I think that kind of, yeah, the really the remaining thing I had thought of was just like, when would we meet next? But if we're gonna put this onto the regular scheduled meeting, for August, that should have us time to get the plan put out. Just the public will be able to see it. It's a standard meeting. Patron comments can be a lot out there included in the meeting and so forth. Is there any other outstanding items related to the plan that the board has questions on, or is there anything else that Lauren and Tanya would like to mention?
I think the one thing is, and I talked to Mr. Bothwell quite a bit, almost daily, maybe twice a day. If there's communication that you feel that the district office needs to put out that will help in this process, just work through Mr. Bothwell and myself. I think it would really help. I don't want to miss anything, because I often think about what should we do. So just, I know you're not bashful about contacting me, so we'll.
No. I think if we can send out some communication following tonight with the discussion that here are the two plans that we're working towards, and two options of one plan that we're working towards, and here's the approved calendar, that'll go a long ways.
Did you get all that? I'll be talking to you.
Okay. Maybe if you want to type it up, I'll send it out, or,
I'll see
or whatever.
how I can do that, so.
Related to the plan, I think the consideration for how we want to continue communications on a regular basis to parents, staff, teachers. And I think it needs to tie into, those thresholds for what we would do or how we would transition into a different strategy, based upon some metric or metrics, right? So that we keep that.
And Drew, it could be just a directive.
Yes, and I think that's definitely an option. However, but I don't think we can be in a position to where we just wait to be told what to do. We have to have a strategy that has some metric that we would, on our own, move into a different,
I know what you're saying.
something different. So if we can regularly communicate something, just to keep people, hey, here's where we've been at the last, a 3-week look back, here's where we're at this week, and just keep that communication going, now, and maybe there's something that isn't workable with that, but I think that would be something that might be well accepted.
The other piece is we should have some guidance from the county mid-next week.
Next Wednesday.
So that could well play in,
Right.
it could be that we just insert the county's guidance in here,
Yeah.
and that's the metric too,
Yeah.
which would be better, but we'll see if we can get it.
Yeah, I think consistency within the county would be ideal.
It'd be ideal, yes. Is there anything else the board would like to inquire about restart plan? If not, we'll let the committee do their work. We'll have this targeted on the agenda for the regular board meeting on Monday, August the 10th. And we will move into action item item 3 on the agenda, the action item regarding the approval of the school calendar. Remember then that there is a couple edits that need to be done that. I would entertain a motion for approval of the calendar.
I move that we approve the calendar as presented with the edits to insert the kindergarten and pre-K start of September 8th and update the hours to 164.5 instead of 165.5.
Is there a second?
Second?
It's been moved and seconded by Justin and Chris. All in favor, please raise your right hand. Motion carried. That meeting is adjourned.